Hey, welcome to Forest County, Pennsylvania, and the Forest County Outback channel, where we combine history with the outdoors. Now, today we are going to talk about railroads and real historic preservation. Now, until the railroads came into this country in the late 1800s, the interior of Forest County remained largely an untouched wilderness. And the railroads changed all that. They enabled the lumbermen to access every nook and cranny of this country. And we're going to talk today about one of the most important narrow gauge lines that enabled that to happen. This is Forest County Outback number 63, the Tionesta Valley Rail Road, an introduction. Now, when I talk about this being an introduction to the Tionesta Valley, that's exactly what it is. The TV operated for a period of 62 years. The northern terminus was in Sheffield, and the southern one was about 45 miles away at Halton on the Clarion River. And in between, there were numerous lines that went off of it. They served, I don't know how many sawmills, Lolita probably being the biggest one, and some other industries. So to tell the story in one video is just not practical. So what we're going to do over the course of probably the next year is periodically I'll make a video on some section of the TV and we'll drop that in there. Now, I have done a few videos already. At the time I wasn't thinking of doing a comprehensive thing like this, but you might want to check these videos out. Number 53 is Hemlock and Leather. That's about the tanning industry, and I talk about a lot there about the founding of the TV, because the tanning industry was the reason for its existence. Number 41 and 42 are a two-part series of the Spring Creek Glass Sand Works, which is served by the TV. And number 24 was Sheffield Junction and the Big Fill, which is a section of the Tionesta Valley just south of Brookston. So check those videos out. Now remember, we use no AI in the production of our videos. This is all real history done by real people. And if you like that idea, help us out by subscribing, giving us a like, a share, and a comment. And remember, comments must be 7 words long to count with the almighty algorithm gods and promote the video. So keep that in mind. You can also support us by checking out our shops. We have a merchandise shelf down below the video, and we also have an online store. There's a link to that in the video description. That's where we have the 2026 Forest County Outback calendar, and we have several enlarged vintage photographs for sale there too. And you can also donate directly on our PayPal page. There's a link to that in the description too. And this is strictly voluntary. There are no membership tiers or anything like that. Nothing is hidden behind a paywall. It's all whatever you feel like you're comfortable donating to help us out. All right, thanks. Oh, you can also follow us on Facebook at the Forest County Outback Facebook page, and email me at terry@forestcountyoutback.com. Now, as somebody who enjoys history and values history, I hate to see any historic structure fall into disrepair, because so many times that is just the first step on the road to demolition. And a lot of people don't like it. And the first reaction you're going to hear is somebody needs to save it. Well, that's an easy thing to say, it's not such an easy thing to do, and I can speak from experience on this. When I was 10 years old, my parents bought what was then 140-year-old farmhouse, which was definitely in disrepair. And they, or I should say we, spent the next 16 years restoring that house and saving as much of the original character as we could, and I gotta say we did a good job. My brother and I spent a big part of our teen years working on that house. So if you think something needs to be saved, I gotta say, step up. Get your checkbook out and start writing. Better yet, roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty. It's not gonna hurt you. So in the next segment, we're gonna look at an interview I did with a guy named Jim Bacon, and he is stepping up and doing the work. The only surviving structure from the TV is the depot in Sheffield. And Jim bought this, spent his own money to buy it, and he's been working on restoring it for the last, I'm not sure how many years. He says so in the video, or the interview. So, let's check that out. Hey, today we're in Sheffield. We're at the Tionesta Valley Rail Road Depot and Museum, and we're going to do a quick tour here, and we are going to talk to Jim Bacon, who is the owner of the building and is spearheading the restoration process here, and talk about his experience, how he came to be here, and a little bit about the Tionesta Valley and the Sheffield and Tionesta Railroads. So we're talking to Jim Bacon, who owns the Depot and Museum, and he's going to tell us a little bit about how he came to be here and what he's done and what he plans to do with the Depot and Museum. Okay.
So I learned about this depot long ago. It was in the logging book that covered the Tionesta Valley Railway, and was surprised it still existed because everything else from the railroad was gone. And like I said, that was long ago, probably clear back in the early 80s. And in the 80s, I was involved with mainline steam passenger excursions. I owned an ex-Illinois Central coach that ran with excursion engines 765, 611, and 1218. And that business kind of came to an end in the early 90s. And then I moved my car to a couple of different short lines, and one of them ended up near my home. We had a little short line there that ran passenger excursions on weekends. And they eventually quit the business also because their cars that they owned were getting harder and more expensive to maintain. So I got the idea at that point of selling my car, but I wanted to do something with the proceeds from the sale that involved railroad heritage in some way. I didn't want to spend the money on an automobile or something that would, eventually go away. So at the time I was working at the East Broadtop Railroad in Rock Hill Furnace, PA, doing restoration work on the shop buildings. And one day I took the long way home and came through Sheffield. This was probably the early 2000s. And I saw there was a for sale sign on the front door of this building. So I wrote down the phone number and I filed it away for a while. And eventually, when I was sure I was going to sell the car, I decided to call the number and see if the building was still for sale. And it turned out it was. A local family owned it. Their father had purchased it for storage purposes back in the 40s when the railroad closed down. And he eventually wanted to make a museum for the logging industry out of it, but through various circumstances, those plans never materialized, and he passed away without doing anything with the building. So anyway, he never made his museum here, and the family used the building to store junk. So they kept it for a while, and the one daughter ended up with it totally because the other siblings didn't want any part of it anymore. And eventually she got tired of paying the taxes, so that's when she put it up for sale. So I guess you could say I came along at the right time. I sold my passenger car, and the price she was asking for it was about 2/3 of what I got for the passenger car. So I was able to buy the building at a very affordable price, and I had enough money left over to get a new roof put on it immediately, which it needed immediately because the roof was leaking. So that was in 2015, and then I set about weatherproofing and varmint-proofing the building. A lot of the doors had gaps around them and some of the windows were open. So we got all that stuff sealed up and got the chipmunks and the mice and the bugs out of it. And with the new roof, it's been a very dry building, and I haven't had any problems of that nature since. So about 5 years ago, we got busy and started drywalling the upstairs. It was just bare planks. The previous owner's son was thinking about making an apartment upstairs at one time, so he stripped all the plaster out and had the building rewired, which saved me a ton of work. So we just were able to put the drywall right on the bare walls. And I hired an Amish fellow from about 40 miles west of here that was a drywall finisher. And in 4 days, he finished all the drywall in the upstairs, which would have taken me 2 whole years to do. I live 100 miles away, so it's, a chore just to get over here and back. And it limits how much time I have to spend over here because I have too many other hobbies. And I still work part-time even though I'm technically retired. So over a period of the last 5 years, we've gotten most things painted, and we made all these displays. Here on the wall is a map of the logging railroad. I don't know how much detail you can see, but all the blue lines are the narrow gauge railroad that owned this depot. And I might mention that in the early days of the logging railroad, they paid the Pennsylvania Railroad a small fee to use the Pennsylvania depot next door. And about 1905, they started formulating plans to build the largest sawmill in Pennsylvania up here northwest of town, and they were going to expand their operation. So they decided to build their own depot and incorporate the offices upstairs for the railroad. So that's why it's a 2-story building.
Right.
So like I said, anyway, my intention in doing this project was to make positive use of the money I got from selling my passenger car. I wanted to do something involving railroad heritage. And since the building was available at the right time and at the right place, I decided to go ahead and do this project. And my intention is to preserve the building, to avoid it having been sold for some other purpose or to eventually being torn down. And I have a couple of younger fellows that help me with it, and one of them will likely take it over when I'm no longer able to be involved. I'm 73 now, so I gotta start thinking about what's gonna happen to the building in the near future or far future. But he is involved in railroad history also, so I hope he'll make a good effort at keeping it up after I'm not around anymore. And like I said, we had this map here with the railroad on it. We have various photographs made by the noted railroad photographer Robert W. Richardson, who originally is from Akron, Ohio, but he went on to found the Colorado Railroad Museum. And then when he became very elderly and retired from that position, he moved back here to Pennsylvania. And when he passed away, his nephew inherited all his remaining photographs. So I was able to track the nephew down. Turns out he lives in Ohio, not too far from me, and made his acquaintance, and I explained the project here to him. And I left his house that evening with a commitment that he would provide all of Bob's Tionesta Valley photos and also the movie that his uncle had made about the railroad. So those form the core of our collection, and we've also obtained other photos from other sources. You know, when I started out, I was going to be happy to have 2 or 3 dozen pertinent photos, and now I have a couple of hundred. So I've digitized all of them so they can be stored on electronic media, and all of the photos themselves are stored in a locked file cabinet at my home at the moment, but eventually I want to have a usable safe here to store them in. And we're going to continue to develop more displays in the future to better tell the story of the railroad, and we're going to expand our model railroad, which is in another room from where I'm at right now. We're going to build a bigger one upstairs, and it's all G scale with Heislers, climaxes, and rod engines similar to what the Tionesta Valley had. And I don't know how long that will take. I'm sure, like most model railroads, it'll never be finished. It'll go on, and Randy will end up finishing it someday, perhaps when he's an elderly guy like me. So is there anything else I can tell you about that I haven't covered?
No, I think that's covered pretty good.
Okay.
Right. So thanks, Jim, for your time, and thanks for your efforts preserving this piece of history. And,
okay, you're welcome, and all you folks that watch this are welcome. I don't really do this for myself because I can only enjoy it for a few days a year, but like I said, it's part of the story about railroad history, and I've always been involved in that, so.
all right. Good.
Okay.
Now, if you're a history nerd, you will have found that interview interesting. So, that's going to be it for the introduction. In the future here, we're going to get into the background of how the Tionesta Valley came into existence, and in future videos we'll be exploring various parts of it and documenting the history as much as we can. So, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.